Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. This episode of Slam the Gavel is sponsored by CPS Protect Consulting Services. A child protective services case is one of the most frightening experiences for any parent. Don't face it alone. Face it with confidence with Urgent Assist by CPS Protect. You can have access to former CPS investigators to make sure you preserve your rights and protect your family. If you're facing CPS involvement and aren't sure where to turn, their child welfare consultants can help you. Visit cpsprotect.com/subscribe and enter the coupon code Slam the Gavel for 60% off your first year of Urgent Assist. And this is thankfully available in all 50 states. I have another announcement. Bradley's mother, Narcissistic Golan, passed away in the fall of 2022. He is autistic and needs structured routine therapies. He receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to the Italian social services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system where he can't speak or understand the language. He will then be taken away from the only family he has ever known. And we have Judge Ann Donnelly to thank for this. And please call Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390 to please keep Bradley here safe in these United States. That's Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390. Hashtag keep Bradley safe. Also, go to the site pleasedoyourjob.com. We need 2,500 more signatures to have a case reopened. That's pleasedoyourjob.com. I totally appreciate having Elizabeth Harding Weinstein back onto my podcast. She was last on December 13th of 2021, where she spoke out on her case of judicial accountability and fraudulent guardianships. Elizabeth Weinstein was here talking to me, and she's a mom. She's a graduate of Columbia University, a previous ER and ICU nurse, as well as a hospital administrator of NYU and a hospitalist for joint disease.
Yeah,
I know I'm saying that wrong. She's
correct.
also
Yep.
she's also a survivor of domestic violence, narcissistic abuse, and previous well-known, respected resident of Briarcliff Manor, New York. Her ex-husband is a high-profile Davis Polk attorney with connections in the judiciary and lifelong history of pedophilia. So I welcome you back, Elizabeth. I'm so happy to have you back on.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Where are you at with your case?
Wow,
So much has happened.
a lot's happened since 2021. It's gone off the rails completely in terms of the level of abuse that our government is perpetrating against innocent people who are trying to protect children. We're in a war, Marianne.
Right.
There's no other way to put it. It's a Holocaust, and I keep calling it a silent Holocaust because they're doing a good job of not making it so apparent, of just marketing it as something different to people, so they don't think of it as a Holocaust. So people's children are getting taken away, their home, their property, they're being placed in cells, poisoned, controlled, murdered, all by government order. And good people are standing by and doing nothing about it because we're calling it a divorce, or we're calling it a guardianship. And the label means nothing. I mean, we have to look at what's actually going on, and the fact that this is all happening with thin to no plausible deniability, and absolutely just a desecration of all of our constitutional rights and our rights to due process. They're just absent. It's so somebody, Gestapo comes to your home, takes your children, evicts you, keeps all your property from you. If that happened in any other place, we'd say we were at war. But because it's done with the police, and he says, no, I have this piece of paper here that says that I can do it, everybody's willing to turn a blind eye. And that's what we need to try and refocus the lens on, and get people to understand the true horror of what's happening on its face. And I think in that way, we can start getting people to rise up against it.
And for years, I did not understand what a guardianship was until a couple years ago when I started interviewing people coming forward talking
Yeah.
about their parents being put into guardianships, and
Yep.
how you're still locked in a
Yeah.
guardianship.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, the
It's
Britney Spears
obscene.
case.
It's completely and utterly obscene. So the idea, I mean, Marianne, with all due respect, I mean, I may be one of the least incompetent people you've ever met in your life. I'm the type of person that I'm like, I don't know if they can do it, I'm going to figure it out, right? And I just get to it. When I couldn't find any lawyer to file my case up through the federal courts, I learned the rules and procedures of the federal courts. I learned the rules and procedures of the US Supreme Court, and I got my case successfully filed, which in and of itself is something just, you don't know how hard it is until you try it.
Oh,
And you don't know
yes.
how hard it is until you get the people who are supposed professionals, the lawyers who have been practicing lawyers for years, who will say, oh, no, 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 I would never do a US Supreme Court filing. I've never done it before. Like, it's too complicated. It's right. None of that ever phases me.
Mhm.
I take every challenge on. I learn what has to be learned, and I make mistakes along the way, and I learn from them, and I continue to do it until I can get it right. So the idea that me, an ER ICU nurse with insight into my care, who learned the law, who knew every single criminal bogus charge that they tried to put against me, and could counter that and show how the law was completely evaded, and they didn't even meet the prima facie showing for the requirements to even bring a case, right? But a judge can still say, they can still find language to say that I'm incompetent when I've never been evaluated by any physician or psychiatrist, because I knew that that was then my husband's means of domestic violence, his way of keeping it clean. He's like, if I can keep marketing this as psychiatric and just have other people label it with no proof whatsoever, then I can get away with this, right? So he would falsify medical documents. I have medical documents where they were saying that this doctor professed that he had like a 2-hour examination with me at the exact same time that I'm in a court case. I have the transcript from the court case with the time, and then this doctor, saying that they were evaluating me at that exact same time. And I'm like, clearly, these are fraudulent reports. I've never seen these people before. They just don't care. The judges don't care. They will say what they want to say. They will issue an order that has no fact finding whatsoever, that's completely contrary to all the evidence that's presented, that ignores all the exculpatory evidence, which is evidence that's within your favor. All of this is illegal and unconstitutional, right? All of it, right? The DA, we're told that if police doesn't even read you your Miranda rights, that you'll get the whole case thrown out. That's not what happens. They don't read you your Miranda rights. They don't give you a lawyer. They don't let you get access to the law library. They just lock you in a pit, as they did me.
And here
right?
you are, a hospital administrator, NYU, for joint disease. You had a high-powered career. You were not.
Well, let's be clear. That was when I was working, and I did give up my professional career to be a stay-at-home mother, which I do not regret. I do not regret. My children are my life, and
I understand.
Sorry, it was the greatest honor to have that job, to raise my children and to build a home where I based the foundation of that home on making, first and foremost, creating what I thought was a loving, safe space, not knowing that within our home was the biggest threat to my children, my husband, ever known. But we can only protect the threats that we see, and I didn't see that threat. So that my professional career was a long time ago. But what this does speak to is my capabilities, my drive to learn. The fact that I was not only an Ivy League graduate, but I had 4.0 when I was at Columbia. Like, I'm not a dummy. I understand what I'm doing, right? I take on any challenge. I'm very, very can do. And when you can have a judge take somebody like me, who's been a stay-at-home mother for 17 and a half years, with not only no evidence of abuse, But with the exculpatory evidence from both the Department of Social Services and from the Briarcliff Manor Police, who were investigating my husband's pedophilia at the time, which said that the children were safe and thriving in my sole care and that there was no evidence of abuse, and that police can still come and get a judge's order, or your perpetrator can get a judge's order, and then police can still come and kidnap your children with guns, kidnap you, evict you from your home, prevent you from getting access to your belongings, prevent you access from your passport, your mail is seized, lock you, shackle you, chain you to a wall. I mean, this is all happening in the US and throughout the world, and it's happening daily, but people don't really hear about it, with the exception of these incredible podcasts, brave podcasts like yours.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, I can't tell you what a difference this makes to have this forum where people can actually get the truth out, because mainstream media won't even cover it. And even when mainstream media does start covering these stories, they leave out very, very important key pieces of information,
yes,
as well as all of the corroborating evidence to show that this is not just a one-off thing, that this is a pattern of practice consistently within our family courts. And frankly, the big thing is our judges. We have to start seeing our judges as the criminals that they are.
Mm-hmm.
They are just criminals that use a black pajama robe to commit their crimes.
Halloween costume.
And market.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's been a wild ride. So since 2021, let me just tell you what happened. I was at that time, and let me just get the date straight now, because I don't even want to mix this up. I was still living in New York. And was I living in New York? I'm going to get my dates mixed up right now, because I haven't gone back, and I've actually been trying to take a little bit of headspace from what's happened and take more of a focus on moving forward. But no, 2021, 2021, I had moved out of New York in the early part of 2021 due to the severe domestic violence and the use of the police and these judges that my husband, who was on the board of Briarcliff Manor Village at one point, and he was just using these despicable low life, people who call themselves judges, but they're just lawyers who come in once or twice a week or once or twice a year even, and help adjudicate the traffic tickets for the village. And those were the people that were writing these orders, saying that I couldn't have access to my home, I couldn't be around my children, I had a 1,500 feet stay away order. I mean, that's reserved for violent criminals. That's like a convicted serial rapist who somehow was let out, right? And this is a mother who's been proven no harm whatsoever, and whom the children were safe and thriving within their sole care, is now getting a 1,500 feet stay away order from the children that she was protecting. It's just clear kidnapping on its face. And that's what these judges do. They kidnap, they coerce, they extort, they torture, they falsely imprison, and even murder, all by our taxpayer dollars. It's insane.
Oh, and people don't know this.
They're waking up to it. They definitely are waking up to it. High profile cases like Britney Spears really started to focus the lens on the idea that somebody could be the best in the world at what they do. And millions of people watching, and a judge can come and take away your right to make decisions for yourself, your right to where you live, your children, your money. And it took a long time, over a decade, for people to really stand up and get loud about that. And that was about somebody that people knew and loved. So it's very difficult for people who were victims that don't have the same fan base as Britney Spears to get the same level of attention that would then cause a judge to stop and say, oh God, maybe I should stop doing this now and get out of this because I might get in trouble. But look at Brenda Penny, nothing. She enslaved a woman. She enslaved a woman and helped, aided and abetted in the grand larceny of hundreds of millions of dollars from Britney Spears. She's not in jail. like she still has her judgeship. I mean, like, so yes, Brittany got out of the guardianship, but did that end up really amounting to real change within that? Like her perpetrators for all of the grand larceny, that she was drugged, she was falsely imprisoned, she was her children were taken from her, her livelihood, right? Like there were times that she couldn't even work because they said, you either do these dance moves or we're going to put you in a mental hospital. And she's like, what is going on? And then you also have to lie and say that you're in this mental hospital because you're so worried about your father's health, or we're not going to let you out of the hospital. Like it's insane. And nobody's in jail. So we have to really start small. Remember that it's just important to highlight the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of the problem is that our judges are criminals. Our judges have judicial immunity. And whenever one person is above the law, they can bestow that right to be above the law to anybody they want, to the police that perpetrate the crimes for them, to CPS who perpetrate the crimes to them. And that needs to change. And I think the action that we can start taking is very simple. Right now, we bestow the highest honor and respect to these people, to our judges, right? We treat them like, oh my God, you're a judge. Like, that's phenomenal. That's one, right? And they're welcomed in clubs and in schools and in elite places that we can control. And if we start turning our backs to them and treating them like the parasites and the criminals that they are, in whatever social sphere that we can, I think that might tip the scales for some of them and get them to say, well, you know what, I'd rather actually act in this, delusion the way that they want me to, and act like I'm supposed to be following the law, as opposed to the opposite, which is what they're doing now, which is whatever they want and without consequence.
And there is no consequence until we get rid of this qualified immunity.
Correct.
Apparently,
it's supposed to be qualified immunity, but what it truly is absolute immunity.
Right.
They bestow upon themselves absolute immunity to each other. Yes.
Now, there have been 4 states that have gotten rid of this immunity. I can't think of the states offhand, but there's 4 of them out there.
Is that true? I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I should have taken a screenshot where I saw that. Okay. We can Google it. I'm sure we could find it. But, this stupidity has got to stop, where they are taking children away from the loving, fit parent and giving them to the abuser. And it's happening time and time again to mothers, and it's and
fathers.
And fathers. Oh yeah, most definitely. Because I have had a father on my podcast, Jim Schock, who's being put through hell by Judge Marianne Scatteratico, neighbor in New York, Yonkers, and he's going through hell. And really, the child should be with him because the mother is living with an 8-count felon. Why is this happening?
It's happening because judges traffic our children. We're all talking about these movies that are out that show child sex trafficking. What we're not talking about is that the largest sex traffickers are our judges,
right,
who traffic children to familial pedophiles. We have to start at the home, right? If you go back and you look at the sex traffic workers, almost all of them came through either a broken home or the foster care system. Okay. Sex abuse starts in the family, period, end of story. It's where we don't want to look, right? It's where nobody wants to consider, because when you've made a commitment to be with somebody in your life, right? First of all, it just takes such, I've been married for 21 years. Okay. We got married in 2002. It wasn't until 2020 that I ever asked myself the question, for the man that I married, who I knew was sexually molested as a child, who had massive red flags, who had complete Stockholm syndrome, who kept the love letters of his sexual abuser for decades, okay? Kept them safe so that he could treasure them, And I never stopped to say, oh, gee whiz, could he too actually participate in the practice? Could he too actually be a pedophile? In my mind, you would just think that you would know that. You think that it would be something that you could tell when you first meet somebody. You would think after dating them for a little while, you'd be able to figure it out. But it doesn't, that's just not the way that it works. And so we're all in these relationships with people. The likelihood that somebody that you know is a pedophile is greater than the likelihood that you are the exception, that there isn't any pedophilia in your family. And until we start acknowledging that reality and then getting down to the why and getting down to the how do we stop that, because that a child sexual abuse in the home is the key to the explosion as to why this child sex trafficking through the courts is so prevalent right now. Because it's easy. Like, I'm the father, I can just, or I'm the mother, right? And I can just, if I want to kidnap my kid, I can go and take them at gunpoint and run. Or I can just go to a judge and get them to sign one piece of paper that says, I get to have full access to my victim and nobody else can be around them anymore. And all the people that are protecting them, if they come around them, that they get to be put in jail. And if they even mention that child's name online or anywhere, or tries in any way, shape, or form, speak out about the abuse of this child, they can be kidnapped and put in jail. I mean, it's insane. But we've got to start with the pedophilia in our homes and understand that this is a child sexual abuse by familial people, okay? But by people within your family, that's where it starts. And if you have found yourself in a relationship with somebody who is sexually abusing your child, the likelihood is that you yourself were probably sexually abused and you fell into that pattern of practice that another pedophile recognized as being an appropriate spouse for them, because you would tolerate the behaviors without realizing it, because you normalize those behaviors. So until people can start the introspection work, we really can't start uncovering and protecting our children at home. I mean, I was the most fierce protector from everything outside the home. Didn't even consider the risks that and the danger that my children were in.
And also, you're an empath. And when you're an empath, you don't catch on to these red flags because you think everyone is nice. Or you...
Well, I focused my lens a little bit on that.
Right.
What I think is everybody is still born pure and good, the God soul within them. And I think that we are all given free will, and that it is up to us to turn to our God soul, which is our strongest energy within us at any point in our life. But if we choose to get so caught up in our human experience and our trauma, that it's easier to try to normalize our trauma, to make the free will choice to normalize the trauma, as opposed to, okay, I participated in some awful things and I don't want to be this person anymore. I'm going to do whatever it takes to right these wrongs. Most people would rather normalize the trauma. Like with pedophilia, it happened. You have two choices. You either become a child advocate, or three choices. You become a child advocate, you become a pedophile yourself, or you become somebody, as I was for many years, who did not see the warning signs, was locked in Stockholm syndrome, and unwillingly and unknowingly aiding and abetting the pedophilia of my own children and of other children, because I was not standing up against the dangers that were, and the red flags that were happening every day in my own home and in our friend base, right? I saw those as normalized behaviors. So I think it's a lot for people to take in.
It is a lot because people think, oh no, like what hit me on the head to get a divorce was I was watching Oprah way back in in
Right.
2004, and she had Ileana Van Zanten speak. And Ileana Van Zanten said, if you see crazy come down the road, you know what crazy is because you've lived with it, you've been normalized by it, right?
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
cross the road and go in the opposite direction. And then when I
Mhm.
heard that, it was like ding, 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 like you're in a box.
Right.
It's like time to
Right.
go. I knew exactly what to do after listening
Right.
to her.
Yeah, that's good. And now you look at Oprah and you're like, oh, Jesus, like, is she running a child sex trafficking ring out of her African schools? And is she what is happening in our world? Like, it just seems in your face right now,
Mm-hmm.
that this use of pedophilia in particular as a means by which to control us as a human race.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is because pedophilia, I'm thinking of pedophilia less as a um, sexual predilection
Mm-hmm.
and more as a weapon against humanity. Okay. So,
Mm-hmm.
why a weapon? Well, people who have been sexually abused as children are often severely traumatized. They don't build the same relationships. And the same quality of relationships in the same way. It becomes more of a codependency, use and abuse relationship as opposed to what true love and understanding and compassion would be within people, right? And then it teaches you to be easily manipulated by the fear of public shaming
Mm-hmm.
or of abandonment. People who have been, because there's no greater abandonment, right? Or than the person or betrayal than the person who feeds you, holds your hand when you cross the street, helps you with your homework, suddenly also being the one who comes into your room at night and does horrific, horrible things, and then tells you and terrorizes you and tells you that if you tell anybody about it, that they're going to hurt the people that you love and cherish and want to protect the most in your life. I mean, that's the ultimate betrayal, right? So this fear of betrayal, this fear of um, uh, abandonment, and public shaming, it's another one. It's the other thing that the pedophile always puts on their victims at the time of when the victim is in the middle of being molested and traumatized, and there's a disassociation going on. They say things like, if you ever tell anybody, people are going to think you're terrible. People aren't going to believe you. People are going to think you're a slut. People are going to say that you wanted this. People are going to, you're not going to be accepted. So, and that carries through in all of our society. Like, you can hear people say, oh, well, it's so embarrassing for you, for the children, for you to talk about this. I was like, nobody looks at the rape victim that comes out against their abuser and says, oh my God, that's so horrible. They say, bravo, congratulations for standing up. That was so brave of you. Like, yeah, like, screw those guys. Like, let's get them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But mentally, it also seems right. The same society that rewards people for coming forward is also the same society that's yelling at you for coming forward, or other people that are coming forward to protect the children and saying that's embarrassing for the children and now you're ruining their lives. No, the shame of pedophilia does not belong on the victim. The shame of pedophilia, the public shaming, the embarrassment, all of that does not belong to the victim. It belongs squarely on the shoulders of the pedophile. But that is something that's deeply ingrained into us by pedophiles to protect the pedophiles, right? Like, the pedophile says, like, don't tell anybody because you'll be embarrassed for them to know that about you. And then, we become indoctrinated into that. It's not how it fucking works.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a stupid but brilliant move on their part, to get people to cooperate with their own torture and abuse and to get the rest of society to protect the very predators that we should be ostracizing. So I just see pedophilia much more as a weapon, less as a sexual predilection. People that are like, oh, they're born that way. No, I don't believe that anymore. I truly believe that this is that had just occurred to you at such a young age that maybe you don't recall or you're disassociated from it. But there's no reason that our species would be created and designed in such a way to torture, right? Where the beauty of evolution and of our species is that we are made to prosper. And so there's no biological benefit to being somebody who would molest and torture children. And so I don't believe that to be a biological characteristic that we could be born with, or something that was malignant in our genes. My personal belief is such that it's a nurture, not a nature thing. This was something that you were trained to have a sexual predilection towards this because it happened to you at a young age that you don't recall. But anyway, well, let's talk about some of the big cases, if you don't mind, some of the things that have been going on.
Yeah.
Particularly get this a little shifted now. So there's two cases. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Catherine Kasanoff case.
Oh, yes.
Now, Catherine Kasanoff was a U.S. Attorney General, an assistant U.S. Attorney General in the Eastern District of New York. She went to Cornell Law School. She was married to a partner at a law firm, just like I was. And Greenberg Traurig was her, Alan Kasanoff, which was her abuser. She has many videos and did have an active order of protection against Alan Kasanoff for the physical and psychological abuse perpetrated against her, which was completely validated. Right? So when Alan got the order of protection, he then went kind of, I guess, behind closed doors in the middle of the night, got the order of protection against him completely thrown out, ex parte, one-sided, and then get a new order of protection against Catherine and have the police come. She was evicted from her home. She was evicted from three other homes. Two other homes, and did the same thing that they did to me. They cut off her finances. They left her homeless. They wouldn't let her get her belongings. Like, we keep commenting on my pretty pink shirt. I finally got my clothes back after 3 years. 3 years of not having clothing. I mean, it's just stupid. I mean, it's a Holocaust. It's a Holocaust. Okay. So Catherine and I met because we had the same judges, the same patterns of practice, exactly, we all validated that the kids were safe in our sole care. In my case, my husband was missing and under a pedophilia investigation. And in her case, her husband had an order of protection against him and was an active abuser. Okay. At the time that her children then get kidnapped from us and given back to their abusive parent. Okay. So because of this, Catherine, and because of her legal prowess, we're like, great, we're going to be able to, really make a crack at this and show how the courts are just being used to commit crimes. Kidnapping, trafficking, extortion, coercion, false imprisonment, drugging, and murder in some cases. Judge Louis LaBelle, Nancy Quinn Copa were our two we call them Supreme Court in New York, which that's the lowest court in the state of New York. Not the lowest, but like the first court is our Supreme Court. Then we have the appeals. Then we have the Court of Appeals, which is the highest court before you go to the U.S. Supreme Court in the state of New York. So LaBelle and Copa were our judges. There was some really good press, and I want to just look up this one. I should know her name off the top of my head, but again, I've got other things in my life as well now, who started covering Catherine's story and really focused on this being a pattern of practice within the family courts. And we're telling the stories relatively accurately. So let me just see if I can find her name real quick. But beyond that, we really could not get much traction, despite the fact that we were two Ivy League graduates with the same judges, the same patterns of practice, with links. Our husbands had links to the head judge, the chief judge, Janet DeFiore in the state of New York. So for Alan Kasanoff, his firm represented Judge Janet DeFiore. And for me, Janet DeFiore was married to Dennis Glazer, and Dennis Glazer was a Davis Polk partner. He was one of my husband's partners. So it wasn't hard to see where the easy, I mean, I hate to say that this is corruption, because corruption implies that it's not the actual use, the intended use of the system. But I think the intended use of the judicial system is to commit crimes.
Mhm.
And then secondary, they gaslight people by like helping people some with the judicial system. But I do not believe that that's been the primary purpose of our judicial system. But anyways, it's clear to see the links and let's just call them conflicts of interest
Mhm.
that Janet DeFiore had. And yet in all of our cases, whenever we brought them up to the Judicial Misconduct Committee, whenever we brought, I had documents, court documents that were stamped July 34th, July 3/4, 2020. So I brought that up through the Judicial Misconduct Committee, and I said, clearly there is clerk impropriety in our case, and that they are they're lying about the date and time stamps on these documents to falsify and create this false narrative in our records. And Janet DeFiore is like, nope, there's no problem here. I mean, it's ridiculous. So Catherine Kasanoff and I had very little traction in getting some of these stories out, but traction nonetheless, right? We have to think of this as kind of like the train going up the hill, because the problem that we're taking on is so gigantic, right? That we can't expect, this explosive, like I said, even in the Britney Spears case, even when they let her out of the guardianship, nobody got arrested. There was no massive change to the guardianship laws. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the changes that are being proposed, we're actually helping them to further traffic and commit people into these guardianships. So Catherine, after 4 years, we used to have these phone calls all the time. And in 2021, she did petition to the court on my behalf, as anybody can do. You can petition, just so everybody knows, in New York State, anybody can petition to have you put in a guardianship, but anybody can petition to have you taken out of a guardianship. So she petitioned on my behalf to have me taken out of the guardianship and said that this is bogus. She's employed. She lives independently. She functions independently. This is just, you put her in a guardianship by all the people who are defendants in her federal case. Like, this is obscene. So that was in 2021. We thought we were getting somewhere with that. They just swept it all under the rug. Nothing real came of it. Issued a dismissal without really evaluating any of the facts at all. And after 4 years of Catherine's constant abuse by the courts, and she was also taken, falsely and handcuffed and told that she violated an order of protection one day when she was walking her dog because her ex-husband didn't want her a mile within the town.
Mm-hmm.
So after 4 years of this, Catherine Kasanoff flew to Switzerland and did the assisted suicide.
Mm-hmm.
She was also a breast cancer survivor. She said that her cancer had returned.
Mm-hmm.
She'd never shared any of that with me. I can't confirm or deny it, I guess I should say. I just know that she was completely heartbroken by the fact that she had reestablished her life, had gotten a home, had been able to maintain her employment, even though her, there's evidence to suggest that her husband was involved in her being laid off, I guess, or some of the work, possibly influenced by the chief judge, who knows, being laid off from her work. She was special counsel to Cuomo and Hochul. Okay. So this is a woman with a big job. And here they are saying that she's an incompetent parent because she's having mental disorders without any evidence whatsoever. So she flew to Switzerland, committed suicide there. And now the entire state goes right back to her husband because the divorce was not final. And those children, her 3 beautiful daughters, have no direct relative, as I'm aware, that's fighting for him, for them in the way that their own mother was.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrific. But the Catherine Kasanoff case got a lot of attention because the evidence against Alan was so strong, because she was so articulate and intelligent, because she was a legal insider, that she was able to get, like I said, Miss Magazine did a story on her. The New York Post ran stories on it, which was great. They ran a bunch of stories, actually. But it's interesting because they start out the stories about, like, clearly this is some, excuse my language, but clearly this is some bullshit going on here. What's happening in our court systems, that this special counsel in our government offices that we consider to be revered is having her children and her homes and everything taken away under these false accusations that have never been proven. And why are there orders of protection involved when this mother's never harmed her children? And how can this be? And then the lens shifted to, oh, you know, Alan says that she's just not well. Perhaps she's just not well. And that's what these, when a story does break out into the mainstream media, that's kind of the trend. They start out kind of garnishing or gaining your attention to get sympathy for the victim, and then the story quickly switches the victim to be the perpetrator. Like, oh no, this poor Alan, he's just trying so hard to raise his daughters, and this publicity is just so harmful, and she's mentally ill. And I mean, it's the dumbest thing. It's the dumbest thing ever. It's, these people should be, and Gus Dinopoulos, the lawyer, I mean, he's a snake. It's gross. He's a child trafficker. He's a predator. He's a child trafficker. And that's what we have to call them. Not all child traffickers look the way that we want them to. We want them to look gross with missing teeth and dirty nails and come out with a weapon and grab our children and run. That's not what they look like. Sometimes they're the really hot guy at the country club that's a scratch golfer and, you know, gets his friend to write a little note that says that from now on he can have the victim and you can't ever protect them. Stupid. We just have to wake up to it. So the Catherine Kasanoff case is really interesting. It's interesting just because in all of the news reports, including the Post, including a few other stations out in California, Miss Magazine, they really avoided the concrete evidence of the patterns of practice. Like they could have had 12 of us say, yep, Lubell, Koba, orders of protection, evicted from my home, blah, 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 like gone right down the line. Like, this is exactly how it happened to me. This is exactly what they're doing to her. They didn't want to do it. So even within the media, when our stories are being told, we're not getting the full stories out there to show how horrific and prevalent these practices are. And then when we do get the attention and it starts kind of getting focused in on the fact that this is corruption in our courts, it doesn't ever really go to the judge still. I keep comparing it to the Brady Bunch. Do you ever see that Brady Bunch episode where it's like, mom said never to throw the ball in the house, and like every kid confesses to all protect Bobby so that Bobby can actually go on his camping trip that weekend, and Bobby was the one that did it, right? So it's the same thing happening within our court systems, that they will point the finger to anywhere but where the guilt really lies, in order to protect the judges to be able to maintain the pattern of practice of having our children trafficked through the courts. So all of these news stories kind of miss that, unfortunately. And the focus is not on the judges, as was the Britney Spears story, right? The focus is not on the judges. Can we, sorry about that. Sorry
That's
about
okay.
And you know, and then let's, you know, talk a little bit about the guardianship, how that happens as well. So I don't know if you've been following, but there's the Michael Orr case. Michael Orr is the actor, I'm sorry, Michael Orr is the football player for whom The Blind Side was based on. The Blind Side was that story, won an Academy Award. Football. It was adopted by the white family in the South and saved his life, and he wasn't very smart, and they made him very smart, and he went on to be the NFL player because of the work that they did with him, and yada yada yada. Well, he starts, after that movie comes out, he's like, wait, what do you mean it wasn't smart? What do you mean? You know, there were things about it that he felt falsely portrayed him.
Uh-huh.
And as my understanding is, he then distanced himself a little bit from the family and eventually hired a lawyer to say, can you look into this whole movie deal and what they got out of it, and you know where the profits are going, and in doing so uncovered that he was never adopted by this family. What he was he was put into a conservatorship by the family, which was not represented to him. They didn't tell him, hey, we're going to lock you in a conservatorship and we're going to have legal rights over you and we're going to have to sign for. They portrayed it as an adoption, and being an 18-year-old kid who didn't know any better signed the papers. Now everybody is fighting over like, wow, they did so much to help him. How could they say that? Versus, oh my God, this is like, of course, like typical racial divide where, you know, you're looking for the white person to come in and save you, the white savior, right? And, you know, this is disgusting and that family should be mortified for what they did.
Was
That's
he
the
eight?
public.
I'm so sorry. Was he 18 when he signed those papers?
18.
And he did
18.
not know. Yeah, he didn't probably, and no 18 would understand what they're signing.
Well, right. I mean, I can't say no, right? We don't want to underestimate other people's abilities, but like
Right.
it is standard practice, right? And that line of questioning is where we should be going, because then you should turn to what judge in their right mind would ever allow for this? What judge in the right mind wouldn't pull that 18-year-old in the court and say, son, you understand that this means that you're not competent to make your own decisions. I see from the news publicity that you're getting that you're one of the best at what you do in football, which means you're highly competent and capable. You are a star athlete, and you can't do that without a complete level of mental acuity and competency. So why do you want these people to make decisions for you, Michael? Why do you, like, that is the role that the judges should be playing. What appears happens is that they were like, yep, and they rubber stamp this, and they aid and abet the crimes, right? So we're talking grand larceny. We're talking, this is slavery as I see it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Slavery, because
Yes.
you're trading humans for money. Okay?
Oh.
You're trading on their abilities, you're trading on their brand, you're trading on their name, it's out and out human trafficking and slavery. And that is what these bogus guardianships are. And so Michael Orr, I'm hoping, who has been nothing, you know, again, I didn't know him my whole life, so I can't speak for certain, but as it's portrayed, appears to be somebody that's overcome many struggles in his life. Growing up with a drug addicted mother and a missing father, and you know, being orphaned, and still achieving incredible success. And to say that somebody who is one of the best in the world at what they do is incompetent and needs to be in this conservatorship, and then the response of the family is like, oh, well, we'll let him out of the conservatorship at any time if he, what? No, just do it now. Do it now. Do
Right.
it 20 years ago. Like, what do you mean if you want? What are you talking about? What are you doing? Like, and why are we normalizing that behavior as a society instead of saying, like, that right there shows me, like, you never intended to do this to help him, because the second that he was up and on his feet and able to take care of himself, and you should have terminated that decades ago. What are we talking about here? It's an insult to our intelligence to think that this is anything other than a mechanism of slavery, trafficking, and control. And by this, I mean the guardianships and conservatorships throughout our country are a mechanism of slavery, trafficking, control to commit grand larceny and horrific crimes. I mean, I don't know the extent to what his conservatorship empowers them as conservators to have over him. I know in my case, it's supposed to be only a guardian of property. And instead, like, he went and threw out all of the federal cases against my husband and against the people who would petition for my guardianship were all defendants in my federal case. or persons of interest. Okay.
Mhm.
They were the chief of police, they were the witness for the guardianship, the chief of police, the clerk of my town, okay, my husband and his lawyer, okay, and they were, my husband and his lawyer and the chief and the clerk were defendants in two federal cases. Well, some of them were, between the two federal cases, they were all defendants. And then my husband was my legal adversary in state cases in a contentious divorce. Any judge in their right mind would have said, the hell are you doing in my courtroom? I'm not only going to throw this out for the conflict of interest, but I'm going to strip you of your law license because you're clearly trying to use the law to commit crimes here, sir. You can't get a guardianship over your spouse after she filed for divorce when you were filed for, are you joking? And in his petition for the guardianship, he says, I want access to all of her confidential documents. I want her put in a long-term care facility and be forced medication over objection for an indefinite period. What? He's like, I'd like to kill my wife, please, but I'd like you to do it for me. And I'd like you to do it in ways that appear to be socially acceptable.
And legal.
And everybody's okay with this. And everybody's okay with this. It is absolutely insane. And this is a Yale Law School graduate, Brian Stryker Weinstein, Yale Law School graduate, Davis Polk partner, still on the board at Duke University for the Keenan Institute for Ethics, even though they have evidence of his pedophilia, they have evidence of his crimes, they have, I mean, like, it's so stupid that we're going to still pretend that any of this is actually lawful and not just murder in plain view being marketed as something else. Grand larceny in plain view being marketed as something else. Dumb. It's dumb. But I think that when you see these big Oris cases, the Britney Spears cases, it helps to bring home to people how easily these guardianships are obtained and the malicious, bogus use of them to minimally steal money from people. In my case, it was tens of millions of dollars. My 3 homes, you know, my entire estate, all of my retirement, my belongings, I mean, forget about the tortious interference with custody, you know, with my children. This guardian, who's again only guardian of property, which means he's only allowed to control my property, is canceled my car insurance, canceled my medical insurance, won't give me money for my medical insurance. I don't have a home. I literally, like, I'm a multimillionaire who can't have access to any of my money, nor can I go and buy a home on my own. He wants total control. All while I never lived in that state. I didn't even live in the state, doesn't even have jurisdiction over me. You understand? And they're doing it anyways. So these guardianship laws, I think what you're starting to see is that it's really coming to fruition that this is going to be the mechanism by which they really institute a full-on Holocaust against us as humans. And, you know, you're a healthy 80-year-old playing golf. They just show up, put you in a golf cart, says you're in a guardianship now, take your home, take your money, don't allow you access to your family. These aren't, you know, doomsday scenarios. These are things that are happening every day in America. And people just aren't paying attention. But I encourage people to look at the Michael Oher case, and please, he's on Instagram, he's on social media. He's getting lambasted in the press as though like he's an ungrateful man for not appreciate. I mean, it is obscene and it is so contrived, right? And even people like Candace Owens, right, are coming out with horrific reports on how he's ungrateful. And we need what we think of as a cancel culture to actually come into play, and people need to come out and start making it obvious how these reporters and people like Candace Owens are nothing other than fronts for these abusers to keep perpetuating their crimes. It's disgusting. Of course, this has nothing to do with gratitude. And frankly, should that family have truly done something to help them, they don't do things to help you for the repayment. You do them to be a good person, and that's it, because it's the right thing to do. And so you're entitled to nothing. I don't care if you decided to pay for a school, that you had the means by which to do so, and that was a good thing for you to do. He owes you nothing. Nothing. He certainly does not owe you legal rights over him. I mean, give me a break. Stupid. It's stupid. It's
Yeah.
stupid.
How can we find him on Instagram?
Michael, or Oher. I think he's just, I'll look it up right now and just find out. And actually, I've got to get this name of this reporter, because she's really, okay. Yeah. It's just,
Got it.
yeah. It's just at Michael, as it's spelled standardly, Oher. So definitely start following him, try and give him some support. I'd actually also like that people follow the Vigil for Catherine, give her some support, or give the movement some support on that. You know, I touched on this really briefly with that. The Robbie Harvey support really helped to push Catherine's case over the to get it out into the public, because he has over 3 million. Hold on, I'm just trying to see. He has over 3 million. Oh, it's Amy. Hold on. He has over 3 million views on TikTok. Let me get Amy's last name for you. God, this is so frustrating for me. I should have had it written down before we began.
That's okay.
But I know I'm gonna get it. It's gonna be right here. I can feel it. Amy Polacco. Dun, 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 dun. I knew I'd get it. Sorry. Amy Polacco. Polacko. She is a journalist, a freelance journalist. She's done a lot of articles for Miss Magazine. She's carried these cases, but most importantly, she's really been able to put the appropriate information in there to show that this is a pattern of practice and not just a one-off case about that. So please follow Miss Magazine for some of those stories. And again, I ask that you constantly do so with a critical eye, because what the standard form for this is that they get somebody who is so trustworthy that sorry about that. They get somebody that is so trustworthy that you trust them implicitly without critically thinking about it. And then eventually you get led astray. Okay. That's how controlled ops work. Okay. So eventually you focus the attention somewhere else. So while these people are accurately telling these stories now, that doesn't mean you ever trust them implicitly without doing your own due diligence and looking at both sides of the story and as much evidence as you can get on your own, and then use your own previous knowledge to try and validate whether or not what you're seeing is something that you can find examples of in your own life. So with that disclaimer, please read some of the stuff that Amy is producing and follow her, because she does a lot of great work in trying to get, as do you, as I mentioned, in trying to get the public's awareness on the atrocious crimes being committed in plain view by our judges out to us. The other one I want to mention real quick is Julie Valadez. Julie Valadez was a mother in, I believe it's in Minnesota, who had her children trafficked to the abuser, and was fighting to get them back in court. And she was also, like many of us, threatened with orders of protection, arrest, harassment. They were just decimating her. So she escaped and moved to Canada. And then her teenage son, her older son, followed her. Actually, not without, on his own free will, followed her.
I did hear that. Yep.
Yes. And then she was then arrested for kidnapping, as I understand it, and has still been detained. I hear that there's a chance that she might be getting out soon, but this has been going on for many, many months now. So she is Julie Valadez, Ladez. And again, she's on social media, but those should not be the only means by which we can communicate with each other, because they're controlled by the very people that are committing these crimes against us. So like me, I've had over 15 accounts taken down. Or I'm sorry, I've had 12 accounts taken down, some with over 15,000 followers at the time. And so that's why we have to just be able to get these stories out however we can, put pressure on the mainstream media to try and tell these stories, and make it clear that because they're not telling them, they're complicit in the aiding and abetting in these crimes that are being committed against our children. There's a particular law I want to alert people to, Kaylee's law. Bad, 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 bad. So the three mechanisms, or the two mechanisms, the main mechanisms that the judges use to commit their crimes is, one, they have immunity. So whatever they do, they get excused for. And two are these orders of protection. These bogus orders of protection are supposed to be used for whenever you have, you're in severe danger and you need instant protection from somebody, but you're not able to, you'd like police protection, you'd like court protection, you'd like an order that says that that person must refrain from ever hurting you. And if they do hurt you, that, they can go to jail and things that are already a part of the law, right? So I don't know that these actual orders of protection really do anything to help true victims. What they do is they're used by perpetrators to kidnap the victims and to harm others. So orders of protection are given to the perpetrator very easily, and they're given to the victims with much difficulty. So I've had, stacks and stacks and stacks of papers showing the stalking, harassment, intimidation, coercion, real crimes that were being committed to me by my husband. And I've been denied an order of protection the whole time. He's went there and said, she's a wonderful mother and she's amazing. But I need her gone because I want to have access to my children. And she says that I can't have access to them until I get better. He literally put this in his paper. I'm not joking. And so therefore there's turmoil in the house. So I need her gone, but she's a wonderful mother and there's no concern of any physical harm. And from that, I was issued a full vacate and stay away order, which has been then re-upped every, permanently. It's just been in effect. I've never had a trial. I've never had a hearing. I've never been allowed access to the court to be heard on it. It was issued by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different judges now, all of whom have denied me any due process. So this issuance of the order of protection is a major, major, major weapon that the judges need in order to commit their crimes. And Haley's law actually makes it easier for judges to issue, number one, lifetime orders of protection without due process, issue orders of protection to children 12 years of age and older. I mean, it's insane. Older than 12. So how can this law supersede the others when that's all of our standard laws state that child is a minor and they're not entitled to, with some severe exceptions, to be treated as adults in the court. But now you're going to issue a lifetime. So your 12-year-old, who now is in many states considered to be, or 13-year-old is considered in many states to be of age and has free will. So they run away for their abuser and run to the parent that's protecting them. And then the judge can issue them a lifetime order of protection and say, hey, you're not allowed to see your mother ever again. And if you do, we're going to put you in jail. But that's what this law does.
Is this, I'm sorry, is this the same law where a judge can decide if a person is mentally ill? Like they can come up with it on their own to decide?
Oh, without any medical, I don't know which one. I would love to see that. I mean, these things are all the same. They're all manipulative, bogus mechanisms by which people can commit crimes through the court and market it as something else. And we call it legislation. It's just getting us to comply with our own abuse, because if you look at Kaylee is this beautiful blonde, and like there's Kaylee with her children, and there's Kaylee on a motorcycle, and there's Kaylee working out, and you're like, I love Kaylee. I want to be Kaylee's friend. And they're like, help support Kaylee's law. And I can't get to the heart of whether Kaylee knows that she's being used and manipulated to get these bogus laws, across. Like, does she just have perverse incentives? Meaning she's got so caught up in wanting to help, and people have been manipulating her and lying to her and telling her that this is going to help when it doesn't actually help. Or like, so she a victim, is she still like a victim of all of this, or does she know very much what she's doing? I do know that there's something called willful blindness, which is when you are locked in a delusion, you will refuse to examine any evidence that you don't want to see that would get you out of that delusion. Okay. So when I've confronted Kaylee and I said, hey, Kaylee, I really, really care about this. And I'm so honored that you've dedicated your life to fighting for victims' rights. But I'm reading this law, and this law sounds awful. And let me tell you, can we talk, and can we go through the language in this law? Like the places where instead of saying must, like you must have a hearing, they say that the judge may avoid a hearing at the judge's discretion. Can I talk to you about what's so damaging about that? How that's a complete deprivation of all civil rights and your rights to due process. And instead of wanting to talk about it, she wouldn't answer my calls, and then like blocked me on all social media.
Oh,
so
no.
That can be two things. That can be she knows what she's doing and she's hiding it, or she is in denial, doesn't want to face it, and it's just shutting me out. So I don't know somebody's intent. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what her intent is. What matters is that that is a bad law that will actually have massive consequences for us as a humanity, for us as a society, where we will allow judges to give lifetime orders of protection without due process, and give orders of protection to people 12 and older. It could be 13. I have to read. I haven't read it in a few months now, with no hearing at the judge's discretion. And that is a very awesome power to give to anybody. And we already, especially people that we know that specifically are using that power to commit their crimes. So we need to limit orders of protection and get rid of how they're being issued, and just punish people for the crimes. These orders of protection are not really providing protection to anybody. They're except the predator. So I'm glad that we got that little bit in. Can you get back to me actually about those laws that you know about?
Yeah, I think, yeah. Now Kaylee's law, that's spelled Kaylee.
Kayleigh. And it's being supported by a group called the Mom's Army and the Dad's Army. Now, again, I heard about these guys, and this was, we're everyday parents that see the horrific crimes that are being committed in the courts and against our children, and the use of pedophilia to try and indoctrinate our children in our schools, and we're standing up against it. And I'm like, hallelujah! Like,
yeah,
this
right?
is where I wanted, right? We're finally at the point where everyday people who aren't victims of this are waking up to it and they're going to start taking a stand. Same thing with them. The woman who runs that program, her name is Seek. Let me get her last name for you. I reached out to them immediately, had these great phone calls with them, was asked to be a part of the Mom Army. Her name is Seek Smith. She's the Mom Army founder. She calls herself the General because they're trying to structure it as though they were a active military organization fighting a war, which they do recognize this to be the war that they are. And they founded this organization, she said, to, try and defeat some of the other bullshit propaganda that's out there. Well, what they're doing is they're actually supporting these laws that make it easier for judges take away our rights. And again, same thing with Sikh. I said, Sikh, I know you to be a fierce warrior in this. I'm so happy that we've talked and we've met and we're able to go through this. Can you and I please sit down and can we go through these laws so I can show you the exact language? And then I'll show you in my case where they use that language that you're now putting into these laws to kidnap my kids. Cut off my phone calls, blocked me on all social media, asked other mom army people to block me, had friends of mine call me and say, please don't contact mom army people. You're poisoning them against the mission. It just feels like a unfortunate controlled opposition, and again, they come out, they're well marketed, they're well funded, they have these incredible activities and movie screenings and come to Arizona and we're gonna have this right.
Well, see, I think this is the law that I'm thinking of. I'd have to read the jargon, but I'm pretty sure I read that a judge can just come up with if you're mentally ill and the guy doesn't have an MD or he's not even a psychiatrist.
Right.
This is the power.
Well, again, remember, that's not a real deterrent because there are, when I say hundreds of thousands of psychologists and psychiatrists that will falsify medical documents and just say that they've seen you when they haven't, say that you have an issue when you clearly don't. I'm competent and capable. I'm linear in my arguments at the exact same time that I'm submitting a paper to the court, which is accessible to all, which shows not only that I can participate in my own defense, but I'm actively doing so, is exculpatory evidence to show you that I'm actively participating in my own defense. They'll just have a psychiatrist write a note that says, no, she's not.
Oh my God.
Okay. So it doesn't matter that the judge can do it. It doesn't matter that, and people are like, oh, well, why would that psychologist or psychiatrist do that? They could lose their license. Because they're not going to lose their license.
They're not going to. No.
Just like the judge isn't going to lose their judgeship. They're protecting each other. They just, the places that we think are there to protect us are there to gaslight us, to get us to comply with our own abuse. And pedophiles like Brian Stryker Weinstein and his horde of cult friends that he hangs out with that support him and support the practice are single-handedly able to affect case law and federal law that help to make this happen easier and easier by the day to the American people. And I just feel like we're in a spiritual war where our kids are getting kidnapped by these pedophiles and indoctrinated into the practice so that they can kidnap more children and this can continue to be a society of abused, manipulated, easily controlled people, which is what they want.
I'm so glad we had this discussion. When you talked earlier, as I was driving home and you mentioned Michael Orr, and I think I yelled in the phone. So I'm very sorry if I screamed in your ear. No. What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And
how can this be happening? He's an NFL player. Like, what do you mean he's in a guardian conservatorship? What do you mean? He's an author. God. He's a New York Times best-selling author. What do you mean?
Oh my God.
Well, so people like Michael and me are unique because most people now, when you're in a guardianship, you're considered a ward of the state. Okay. So when most people are wards, those people, they very quickly try and take and isolate away from society so that you aren't walking evidence that's contrary to their false narrative, right? Their narrative that you're incompetent and you're capable. Me, I'm fully functional. I live and function independently. I am playing very high level sports, tennis, pickleball, paddle, right? And winning at them, right? So it's very difficult to be able to compete at that level. If I was in let me think of what they said that I have. I think they said that I have new onset of paranoid schizophrenia and that I'm an acute bipolar manic psychosis continually for 3 years since the day that I found my husband's pedophilia online. Right? I mean, it's like, God. It's so funny. And in the court case, where you would laugh. They had me do my own cross-examination. They had me do my own cross-examination. And so I'm examining these doctors, and I was like, wait, I did my psych training at Bellevue. The DSM-5R specifically states, and I would like go through and I listen. I said, so what evidence do you have that I have? Which family members of mine did you talk to that specifically stated that I have an implicit distrust of my family, and which members were they? Right, which is one of the requirements in the DSM. And they were like danger, because they're not used to that level. They're used to another lawyer giving them softball questions so that they can just write you off. And yeah, it's just insane how easy it is to get somebody committed into a guardianship and take away your children, your home, your property rights. So it's just the Gestapo. It's a Gestapo. I mean, we didn't even talk about the fact that in July of 2022, when I was out in Amagansett, and because that's where my friends are and all my summer home, and where I've spent summers for decades. And so I went out there one weekend, and my husband happened to be in the town that weekend and didn't want me there. So he just sent the police to pick me up on my tennis court. Like, just pick me up on my tennis court. And I'm asking the guy, I'm like, where's your warrant? What? He's like, you're under arrest. I'm like, I'm playing tennis. Like, what? I'm committing no crime. So I'm not in the position of committing a crime.
God.
You must have an active warrant for my arrest. You have to show me the warrant. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, what am I being arrested for? And knocks the phone out of my hand. And he's like, we'll figure something out by the time we get you to the station.
Oh my God.
And they locked me in jail for 95 fucking days.
Yeah.
95 days. I was in the Valhalla jail. That happened down in Amagansett. And then the Briarcliff Manor police, and this is the other point that we really need to get people focused on. You are paying your tax dollars so that other people can commit domestic violence against their spouses. Okay. So the Briarcliff Manor police on July 4th, took their second in command, which was Detective Sergeant Frederick Galbraith, and I think he's fourth in command, but I could be wrong about that. I don't want to say that. I know that Detective Sergeant Galbraith is secondary to Chief DUI Bowetti, and I call him DUI Bowetti because he's got a DUI. The guy has a DUI, and then they make him chief of police. Okay, so that's how corrupt Briarcliff Manor. They don't give a fuck. So the chief of police is Bowetti. Second in command is Detective Sergeant Galbraith. He drove on the 4th of July, 4 hours with Detective Chavez to East Hampton to pick me up on what was even if true, was nothing other than a ticketed offense, like a misdemeanor offense of saying that I posted a picture of my children and said that I love them. Well, there's no active order of protection. They have to prove that there was an active order of protection, and they have to prove service of the order of protection. They had none of those things. So they spent their tax dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, the car, the police, back and forth the entire day. It is insane. That is a waste of people's money, right? People that are working hard to try and put gas in their car at $4 a gallon right now. And yet you're going to pay for a millionaire, Brian Stryker Weinstein, to abuse his wife? Why? Why are we okay with that? Right? It's just disgusting. So yeah, I got arrested in East Hampton. It's not an arrest. Let's call it what it is. It's aggravated assault and kidnapping. Okay. By 2 police officers. And by the way, the chief of police in East Hampton, friends of our family.
God.
Right. So like Brian makes a phone call to the chief of police, and the next thing I know, I'm being picked up. Give me a break. Mike Sarlo, chief of police in East Hampton.
Shame on you.
No, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. Yeah. So he comes, picks me up. He had these 2 guys come and pick me up. I spent overnight chained. They weren't going to give me anything to eat. They're like, no, sorry, we don't have the means for it. I was like, are you joking? So eventually the East Hampton police gave me a bagel.
Nice.
Yeah, right. And I was sleeping on a slatted, it wasn't even like a regular bench. It was like slatted bench overnight. all because they said that I walked past my husband on the beach. Stayed 20 feet away from him, but I walked past my husband on the beach, not knowing that he was there, not having it right. No active order of protection. And
Oh
I
my
was like,
God.
show me the order of protection. You have to show me the order of protection. You have to show me proof of service.
Mhm.
Nope, wouldn't give either. Just locked me up. Then the Briarcliff police came the next day, picked me up, brought me all the way back to Briarcliff, right? Got there, had an quote unquote arraignment there where they just put me in jail. Well, actually, we were supposed to have an arraignment. They said, oh, we can't have an arraignment because she's under guardianship. I was like, it's a guardianship of property. It's got nothing to do with my person. I don't need that fucking guy here. They're like, well, we're going to wait for him anyways. So now we're just going to put you in jail. We're just going to put you in jail until we get him here.
Oh my God.
On what? You have no charges against me. What do you put? You can't just put people in jail because you want, it's so Stuart A. Halper. And this guy is a backup associate village judge at Briarcliff Manor. He's a real estate lawyer. He's a real estate lawyer.
You know, and this is happening to people and the elderly. And,
oh yeah.
You know, I remember watching the movie Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and they said in the movie she was a ward of the state. I'm going, what's that mean?
Yeah.
You know, and then that's when, oh God, how long ago was that I watched that? 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, the wheels were slowly starting to turn until I started this podcast and started talking to a bunch of other people that were fighting these guardianships. And now then I had heard about you over through Facebook and the, you know, people in the threads talking about you. And I was unable to talk to you. I was lucky to talk to you back in December of 2021.
Yeah, thank you.
But then, well, I think my heart goes out to you. And
I was in the, I call it the clink. I was in the clink for 6 months from July through December. And so this is what they do. They put you in jail with no criminal charges. They fabricate something eventually. And we're talking about hundreds of people cooperating with this. Doctors at the jail, sergeants at the jail, chiefs at the jail, doesn't matter, right? They don't care. They lock you in. They put me in solitary conditions for 24 of those 95 days. Okay. Solitary conditions where I'm locked in a cell for 23 hours, let out 1. And people are like, they can't do that. And I'm like, change your language. They did do it. So they physically can. Do you mean they can't do it legally? They can't do it lawfully? Duh. I'm in jail with no criminal charges. The law does not apply.
Dave, you know what?
Like, it's a Holocaust.
Well,
so they lock me in. I start like writing my own papers, filing my own stuff. So then they deny me paper, they deny me pen, they deny me access to the law library. I mean, it's sick. It's just a Holocaust. And then after the 95 days, Stuart A. Halper, who's a real estate lawyer, gets 2 psychologists, not psychiatrists, 2 psychologists who never saw me, to opine that because I'm appealing his order for a competency exam, because he jailed me for a competency exam, and under New York State 730, it makes it very clear you cannot be jailed in order to participate. But if somebody is already in jail for committing a crime and you needed an exam, then that exam can be done in jail. But you can't say, hey, I want to force you to participate in an exam because I want to manipulate the results. So, and you're smart enough to avoid going to a psychiatrist and psychologist because you don't need it. The same way you don't go to an orthopedist for your leg when your leg's not broken, right? So therefore, I'm going to put you in jail to mandate that you participate in this psychology report, right? You can't do it. It's illegal. Yet Stuart A. Halper did it anyway. So I appealed that decision. Then he said, because I'm appealing the decision, or these 2 psychologists opined that because I'm appealing the decision, that means I cannot meaningfully participate in my own defense. And if I cannot meaningfully participate in my own defense, that then means that I'm incompetent. And therefore, he has to throw all the charges against me. But now he's going to transfer me to a state-run mental facility for 90-day observation. And I say, well, Stuart Halper, I've already been in a state-run facility under psychiatric observation for the past 95 days. Because during the time that I'm in jail, which is a state-run facility, you are under the auspices of a psychiatrist and a psychologist who at any time, if you don't act appropriately, will put you in the psych ward of the jail. and then evaluate whether or not you can remain in the jail. I was in general population the whole time. So I've already been under evaluation by a state-run facility for 95 days, and I'm still in general population. I receive no medical care whatsoever. I don't take any medication of any kind, psychiatric or otherwise, nor do I get any psychiatric assistance, nor do I even have any psychiatric ideations.
Right.
I sleep well every night. I exercise every day. I'm a leader within the facility. I helped all the other people with their briefs or understand their cases or advocate for them.
Mhm.
Like, so what right do you have to put me in a state-run mental facility for observation now? But yet they did. So then they transferred me to Rockland Psychiatric, and a nurse practitioner, Kenny Belizaire, admitted me there. And again, I know the law. So I'm like, under New York State Mental Health and Hygiene Law 9.21 to 9.25, you have to have had 2 physician certificates to admit me to this facility. And you would have had to have had an application by a physician. You don't have any of that. So you're not even in compliance to keep me here. Didn't matter. Didn't matter.
Oh,
Didn't
no.
matter. So I was locked in there. So Kenny Belizaire, who was actually very perverted, used to come in my room when I was getting changed, refused to leave, like awful. And then when I complained about him coming on to me and the sexual inappropriate nature and being, you know, I was like inappropriately dressed, and he would come in and I'd be like, please leave, please leave. And he's like, no, I'm not going to leave until you listen to me. And I'm like, get out, Kenny. I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like, I would just get up, put a robe on, and I'd be like, you know, screaming at him to get out. Whereas other people would just cower. I don't cower. Right. So
Mhm.
then I go and I file complaints with the hospital and with JACO, with the Joint Commission, and with there's a division of the mental health and hygiene law where it's supposed to be that they're advocates to support mental rights, you know, people who are in these facilities, their rights. I complained to everybody about and sexual assault of people in these facilities, in these psychiatric facilities, is a very, very well-known, well-documented ongoing problem.
Mhm.
And so I expected that I would get some help and relief because this was so egregious and obvious, and it was witnessed by many other people, right?
Mhm.
And instead, you know what they did? They moved, they moved my room directly next to his office.
Ah,
I mean, it's so crazy. I was like, what is going on here? So then I kept pushing, pushing, pushing. So then what did they do? They then finally moved me to a different floor and again said, oh, see, this goes to show her paranoia. She can't trust anybody. She thinks that people are hurting her. And I'm like, okay, so you can rape somebody. Not that he raped me. I don't want to make that. But my point is, there's no evaluation as to whether or not the veracity of what you speak is true. It's just the sheer fact that you said that something happened, that then they're going to just claim that that's paranoia.
oh, yes.
Because, right, it's stupid. It's dumb. It's like the dumbest friggin' thing. Anyway, so they moved me to a different floor with a Harvard doctor, Dr. Cavicoli, who himself was fired from Valhalla, from the New York State hospitals in Valhalla for indecent, inappropriate behavior.
Oh,
He was terminated there and then got hired at Rockland Psych.
oh my
And
God.
right. And I was like, no, I'm not going to meet with you. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? What is wrong with you people? You can assess from my daily functioning, from the fact that I sleep well every night, from the fact that I'm on no medications of any kind, and I'm very well presentable, I work out every day, that I have no psychiatric ideations. You do not need to sit down with me and have me consent to my own abuse and torture in order to claim that there's no need for me to be locked into a psychiatric facility and that I am not a danger to myself or others. But doesn't matter. It's disgusting. So I was in there for 60 days. No, I was in there from October 9th, I believe it was, through December.
Oh my
December 20th.
God.
Yeah, it's crazy. And they were trying to force Medicaid, and they kept saying, they said it on record. On record. They've said, well, if she was smart, then she should just take the medication just to humor me,
Oh
just
my
to get
God.
out of here. and then stop it as soon as she's out. But she won't even do that. So that shows that she can't participate in her own care, that she does not have insight into her own care, because she will not just lie and take medication just so that she can get out of here.
Oh my.
And I'm like, you guys are sick, 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 sociopathic people. And these are doctors, these are nurses, these are lawyers, these are judges. These aren't the low-life people that we want to think of as child and human kidnappers and traffickers. These are educated, seemingly responsible, highly revered people in society, kidnapping, trafficking, drugging, imprisoning people in plain view. And we got to stand up against it. We just have to. I mean, this is just, and people like Lizzie, just, he's letting you live and you're not in jail. Like, go away and be quiet. And I was like, and what? And just wait for him to do this to my kids? The second that they come out and start saying, yeah, everything that my mom was talking about is true, and that was going, he's going to put them in a guardianship. He's going to, Brian Straker Weinstein, I'm just going to give him full power to be manipulative to our children. The first thing that that man did after I was kidnapped by the police and taken out of my home is he put my children under psychiatric care. Why? Because he wants to discredit them. And it is the means of every sociopath just to claim the Martha Mitchell effect. Just say that your victims are crazy, and then you didn't commit the crimes against them.
Yeah, this is the modus operandi, and everyone needs to know that this is going on in, probate or family court. Family court and probate are actually the same thing.
And criminal courts, in all courts in general. And it's not a U.S. problem. It's not a New York problem. It's not a California problem. It's not an Ohio problem. It's not a Minnesota. It is a worldwide problem. And this is why I keep saying that this is a spiritual war, because it's just too coordinated. It's just too, I just feel like these people have given up on their God-given soul, and they've chosen their trauma, and they've chosen to just be blindly following whatever they need to follow in order to, they think, make it easier for them to live this life. And it just seems it's just too coordinated to think that it's all by accident, that this is just randomly happening. What the modus operandi, as you exactly quoted there, is brilliant, that they're using in New York. It's the same one that they're using in Sweden. It's the same thing that they're doing in Europe. It's the same thing that I'm hearing about in Canada. It's the same thing that I'm hearing about in Latin America. Like, it's just too coordinated just to be random, right?
Right.
So that's why I feel like that this is really something bigger than us. And I think the only way that we get out of it is to acknowledge our spirituality, to acknowledge our choices in life, and to take accountability and responsibility for our free will in ways that we may have contributed to this problem, and turn away from it. So getting to that point, though, I do want to say one thing. We don't really give pedophiles any option for recovery. Everybody says there's nothing you can do, put a stone around their neck and throw them in the ocean, right? Like they quote the Bible, so this is where I go with that. Why would anybody then seek accountability and redemption? Because we're not offering redemption, right?
Right.
We're offering you death. We're going to just tell you that we're going to ostracize you for the rest of your life, and we're authorizing only death. That, to me, does not seem like a pathway by which we can get people to come forward and stop this practice, especially breaking the cycles of generational abuse within the families, right? So I think we need something kinder, empathetic. I think we need to start with the premise that people aren't born with this. This was something they themselves were horrifically tortured as a child. But then they made the choice themselves to be an abuser. Not all abused children abuse children. I was abused as a child, and I became a protector. My husband was abused as a child, and he became a predator. It's a choice. It's a choice. And I think we need to give some level of space, hold space for them to make different choices.
Mhm.
And to say, if you can truly heal and truly stop,
Mhm.
there's a space for you here. But I think the outcome is that most people don't believe that they can truly heal or they will truly stop. And that's why, they recommend nothing other than, death for people who are going around and sexually abusing children. And I don't know, it's a problem that I sit with every day. And I try and think of how I can put more light and love out into the world to heal this, because, darkness doesn't heal darkness, only light does. So trying to find ways to do that. I don't know, do you have any suggestions? What do you think of all that?
Well, I interviewed Brian Vukadinovich on July 1st, and he gave an excellent podcast on solutions to handle to handle this corruption issue.
Okay.
And I mean, it was a brilliant ideas that he gave for these solutions.
Great. I'll look at that.
Yeah, I mean, he was just amazing. And I definitely want to have you back on my podcast. And I wish I could have interviewed Catherine, because she was on my friends
Oh my God.
on Facebook, but I didn't know any of this was going on until
Yeah.
postings were coming of the abuse and Robbie Harvey. And I was seeing that and going, wait a minute, she's a friend. I could have
Yeah.
done a podcast with
Yeah.
her. And
Yeah. Well, I have to say, a lot of us victim advocates who are friends with Catherine struggled a lot. I'm a very honest person. People that know me I'm not Pollyanna about things in any way. So, and I don't believe that you should fabricate, put somebody up on a pedestal after they choose to leave this life, that we should be honest about things. There were times that Catherine was not helpful to our cause,
Mhm.
that, in my estimation, we have to know she worked for Hochul and Cuomo as a
Mhm.
special prosecutor, right? She was the special prosecutor. I'm sorry, as a special counsel. She was a special prosecutor on 9/11. She worked in the Eastern District and helped prosecute the 9/11 convictions, which, people have looked into that, and we see a lot of corruption involved the in everything surrounding 9/11, which put into place, the most monitored militant group in our country against its own citizens,
Mhm.
with the Department of Homeland Security. Um, so there were warning signs there. But some of the times, Catherine, first of all, got very caught up in as many victims do, these gag orders, right? Like, it's rare that somebody like me says, I don't care what you say. I'm going to say what I want. Anyways, you're trying to kill me. You're trying to kill me whether I'm quiet or I'm loud. So
Mhm.
I'm going to be as loud as I want. Go ahead. You already are trying to kill me, right? Like, this little reprieve that I've had now for the 6 months since I've been out of the clink, as I call it. I know it's not a permanent thing. I know that he's gunning for me. I know that my very intelligent, articulate, put together existence is a threat to the false narrative that he's spinning. And if he's lying about me being incompetent, then what else is he lying about, right? Why would he have a right to keep all my clothing for 3 years? Why does he have a right to keep all the homes? Why have all my homes? Like, everything about my existence is a threat to him. So I know that I'm constantly under threat. Catherine, when put under threat, as many people would cave and would be silent. So just even if you asked her, I'm not sure that she would come on. And then there were other times when people were like, you're a federal prosecutor, like, you understand the law better than others. Can't you just help me write my case? Can you help me? And she sometimes, I hate to say it, but she gave me advice that was contrary to the law.
Oh.
Did she do it on purpose? Was she trading me to get, like, as soon as she started doing things on my case, suddenly she got access to her children. And somebody suggested to me, perhaps
Oh
There
man.
was some exchange there. I don't know. I don't want to think that that's the case,
Mhm.
but I have to examine all possibilities. I realize that delusions hold more danger for me than living in the security of a delusion holds safety. So I don't know. So I don't want to, yeah, it would have been great for you to have her. She might not have come. She might have shied away from the fact that the judges are corrupt and tried to talk instead about law partners maliciously using the courts. I don't know. But the true issue is the courts are a place where judges commit crimes, and that's what we need to focus on. And I know that a lot of judges will want to punish me for saying it, but God, you're doing it anyway. You took my kids. It was the worst punishment you could have ever done.
Well,
So
and the thing is, Liz, it's like we're still living in the Victorian era where when guys wanted to, go after someone younger and whatever, they would put their wife in
yeah,
a in fact,
right.
I was watching on HBO, if you go on and look up Sinead O'Connor, there's a documentary that they did right shortly after her death.
Yes.
Did you
Yes,
see it?
same.
Yeah.
Yes, no, no, that's another person I meant to mention as well. Yes. This was happening to her and she was speaking out about it.
Right, and
Yeah.
she was a child. Her father took her to a place where he thought they could straighten her out and help her, and instead, she experienced more terror and abuse
Right.
there, but she also met women that had been locked up since the
Yes.
1950s. Oh
Yep.
my gosh, because
Yeah.
ex-husbands or whatever you wanna call them, wanted to get rid of them.
Yep, that's exactly what. And people said to me like, "Oh my God, were you so afraid while you were in there? Were you, with the patients scary?" And I was like, "No, the patients were all like, they were normal people who were victims of domestic violence, whose parents or guardians or grandparents or were trying to punish. I think all of them could be traced back to some level of abuse, and the people that were putting them in there were trying to silence them, right, and make them think that there was something wrong with them, okay, and discredit them. Those were the people that were in there. The scary people were the doctors and the nurses. Those people are socios. Those people are willing to lock you in cages and drug you,
Mhm, mhm.
which is what Brian Stryker Weinstein does. He's locked me in a cage and drugged me. Okay. And if he did that in his basement, we would have a SWAT team there.
Mhm,
But he
mhm.
just has a judge say that it's okay to do it. And we're all like, okay, yeah, maybe she's crazy. She was in a psych ward. I'm like, you guys are so stupid. Of course I'm not
Oh my
crazy. I
goodness.
mean, it's obscene. It's
It
obscene,
is.
Marianne. But it's, I believe that the truth is coming to light. I believe that I was put here, and people kept saying, like, how do you not break? How have you maintained your sanity? Like the stress that you're under. I've been left. I mean, he cut off all my finances. He left me homeless. He first and foremost took my children and put them back into the control
The Stockholm syndrome.
of the
And
man who had been abusing them and who they escaped from for weeks while my husband was missing and under pedophilia investigation. And to have them taken by the police and
oh,
brought back to him is literally that in and of itself. That's my biggest stressor. Okay, that's my biggest stressor. And then the rest of it, like, how do you live without money? How do you live without housing? How do you live? Yeah, those are stressors, but it compares nothing to being a mother, knowing that your children are being maliciously used and tortured and then made to defend the pedophile, like just broken, right? And my children were so intimately close to me, and to have them
mm,
not be able to communicate with me in any way or form, and shape or form, and have to watch me being tortured and me watch them being tortured and broken. That's the biggest stressor that I face. Everything else pales in comparison. But our major stressors in anybody else's life, like
yeah.
being cut off all your finance, being taken from all of your belongings, being left homeless, being under the control of somebody that you don't know. This guy, Kenneth Bunting, this fake guardian, he's a gross, despicable human being that denies me money to eat or live, right? He doesn't follow any of the laws of the guardianship. Like, he's not filed the forms that he's supposed to. He's not given me an accounting. He's supposed to have these visitations with me. Like, none of that he does. Nothing. He does nothing. Okay. And nothing happens to this man. But like, being in that situation alone would break somebody. And the only way that I feel like I've been able to rise above it is because I know this isn't just my story, but I happen to be somebody who's articulate and intelligent, and I can speak about it for those that can't speak, for those that are like Charlie Thrash, or Peter Max, that are locked behind closed doors, that are denied access to their family, that are being denied access to their comforts, to their pets, to their appropriate medications, to anything that would like keep them grounded in this life. Right? It's just, again, it's murder in plain view. And so I know that they're trying to do it to me, but that's my mark on this world. And I'm not going down without a fight. And I'm not going down without naming names. You know, like Robert DeBella, the judge who has me in this guardianship, Janet C. Malone, who put me in the guardianship, Ann E. Minahan, the chief judge of the state of New York. I'm sorry, the administrative judge of the 9th Judicial District, who got promoted as such after she locked me in a psych ward and gave me an order of protection against my town, told me I couldn't go to the town. I mean, it's fucking stupid shit. These people are stupid. It's so obvious and stupid what they're doing, but
at taxpayers' expense.
All paid for, all of the abuse of a millionaire paid for by your hardworking dollars. So we need to be loud about this. We need to be really clear about what the problem is. The problem is our judges are criminals. The problem is our criminal judges bestow their immunity to others. And the problem is that we don't have any due process in this country. And I think that I think people are born good, and I think people can turn to their goodness, but they're not going to until we point out to them the ways in which they are wrong, that they are harming our society and our humanity, and give them a consequence unless they turn to their goodness and do what we think that they were hired for, which is to enforce the law. So I'm trying to do whatever I can in my own little way, while trying to stay positive and keep myself together, and, you know, just pray that my children will come back.
Well, I'd like to have you back on again in the future.
I would love to. With
more updates. This was a wealth of information.
Yeah, a lot. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry, because you know what? We need to know. But hey, don't jump off. Oh, wait a minute. Let me ask you, if you want people to contact you, how do you want to be contacted?
Sure. You know, I give out my number all the time. 646-261-7685. It's a phone number. If you need me, if you're a victim of this, if you like me to help look through some of your stuff and maybe pinpoint some red flags or danger zones in your cases, you know, things that you can, I don't charge anybody for anything. I feel like this is just my calling, and I believe that karma is a real currency in this life. So I'm just doing what I can to help people where I can. You can find me on Instagram at Free Lizzie Harding, but I will not friend people until I actually know them, because they've canceled all my other accounts. And so I keep this one private. I had a website that was Lizzie's Army, LIZZIESARMY, LizziesArmy.com, but that got taken down after this last 6 months of the psych ward, and 6 months of the clink.
God, I'm sorry.
I was like, all right, we're just taking it down a notch. So that website got taken down. But you know, they can always reach out to you. I'll stay in touch with you too.
Okay.
And I appreciate that they do, because you know, one of the things that they do when the Gestapo comes, these people pretending to be police, pretending to act under law when they're just doing it on their own, and they kidnap you, is they don't let you phone anybody. So when I'm missing for long periods of time, I appreciate that people know to check in with me and know that I'm missing and start calling the jails.
Oh my God.
I mean, come on. Let's be clear about something. I was 48 years old. I had no trouble with the courts or police in my life at all. Suddenly, I find out that my husband's a pedophile. I find all his online pedophilia. I find out that Brian Stryker Weinstein pretends that he's this kid named Jesse, Jessie, and pretends that he's either a little boy or a little girl and role plays and sexually solicits kids, right? I find stacks of it. I bring it all to the domestic violence unit, the DA, and to the police in Briarcliff. Suddenly, I'm arrested 5 times in 3 years. The police and the DA are the ones perpetrating the arrest. Oh, and let me just say this last thing. Joyce Miller, I'm sorry. Joyce Miller is the district attorney in the Westchester County DA's office who's in charge of the domestic violence unit. Okay. Joyce Miller contacts husbands and says, do you need help getting an order of protection against your wife? Because I can do it. And husbands are going on record. I have a person by the name of Sophie Sassoon. In her case, her husband is on record with the, it's her ex-husband. I'm sorry, she just got remarried, so I don't want to confuse people that this is Malcolm. But her ex-husband went on record to say, oh yeah, Joyce Miller contacted me because she said that I should really get an order of protection against my wife because she's involved with a militant group of women who are trying to do anything that they can to harm the male species. I'm like, yeah, protecting our children is harming males. Yeah, you're right. Like, it's the dumbest thing. And of all advocates that you will find, as you heard in this podcast too, I always make it clear this is not a man versus woman problem. This is a predator versus victim problem, that they put men in guardianships and lock them up and use bogus orders of protection against them, just as they do women. That this is just the use of our courts to kidnap kids by the predator, right? So the fact that he's going to go and say that, and you can ask all of the fathers' rights groups, those people, you know, the Veterans for Liberty Network, you know, those fathers will always say, like, we want Lizzie to speak because Lizzie makes it clear this isn't just about a patriarchal court trying to, you know, behead women and bring back the Salem witch trials. This is about the court system being used by both malicious men and malicious women to torture their victims. So anyways, yeah, Joyce Miller, she's running the domestic violence unit at the DA's office of Westchester County, and we'll just contact people and be like, hey, you want me to put her in and get an order of protection against her? I'm your girl, come to me.
Oh, creepy. Gross. So creepy.
Gross. Yep. And she was the DA in my case, in Catherine Castanoff's case, in Sophie's case, and others. So you guys should look her up and send that woman some messages that you're on to her. It's gross. These people are gross. They're cowards. They're all cowards.
Definitely. Well, hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I am your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, and newly released Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children. Please join Lizzie again and other exciting guests. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, and feel free to donate, buy me a coffee to help support this podcast. I totally thank you, Liz, and you'll be back.
Thank you. Thank you, babe.